Hello, scholars, and welcome to today's science lesson. Today should be a fairly quick lesson. We're going to do a little bit of review, and then we're going to do a quick investigation. Last week, we talked about erosion, and we were learning how erosion changes Earth's surface. And remember, we did that silly motion. That's going to help us remember what erosion means. Erosion, remember, is what moves the soil and tiny rocks that weathering leaves behind, and it carries those little pieces of rock and pieces of land from one place to another. Now, let's take a look at this word here, weathering. We didn't quite talk about that, so we're going to focus on that today. Weathering is a natural process that breaks apart or changes rock. Some of the natural forces that cause weathering include heat, water, wind, and living things. There are three main types of weathering: physical, biological, and chemical. Weathering, unlike erosion, breaks up things into smaller pieces, but it does not move them away. So when we're thinking about weathering, we're only going to think about the physical type, okay? And physical means like how when something is touching something. So today we're going to be focusing on what weathering looks like with using wind, rain, and then we're going to use erosion as well to see how the erosion moves those little pieces, okay? So your worksheet today looks like this. Remember, if you want to zoom in to see it a little bit closer, you can push this magnifying glass here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom to 100% just so I can read it a little bit clearer to you. So we're going to do a little investigation called cookie weathering and erosion. So weathering is, remember, weathering is when a rock is naturally broken down into smaller pieces by wind, heat, or rain, or by somebody, like a person or a thing, such as an animal. So weathering is the breaking down of material. We can write that. And we're going to be using different materials to pretend we have wind, animals, and plants, and water. Now, here it says a straw. So you are going to need a straw today because you're going to be blowing through the straw and pretending to create wind. You're going to need a toothpick. Now, I didn't have a toothpick, but I had like a little coffee stir stick. And as you can see, I cut it a little bit so it's pointy. So you can use a coffee stir stick, a toothpick, or even a fork. We're going to use this material, pretend that animals and plants are breaking down rock. And then a dropper, that's going to be our rainwater. Now, I don't have a dropper, so I'm going to use a straw and a cup of water. And I'll show you how to use these two materials so you can get drops of water. And we're going to pretend that that is our rainwater. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a cookie. And we're going to pretend that cookie is a rock. And we're going to demonstrate how we can break down the rock, which is our cookie, to see those little itty-bitty parts. And let me one more time go over that definition of weathering again. It's a natural process when a rock is breaking apart into smaller pieces or changing. And what causes weathering is heat, water, wind, and living things. Then, after we do that investigation, we're just going to explain the erosion that's happening. Remember, erosion is when a piece of earth or material is moved from one place to another. And this can be moved by water or rain. Sorry, not water or rain, water or winds. And this bottom question is, how did erosion happen during this experiment? After we use our straw for the winds and our straw and our other cup for the water, you're going to tell me how that erosion happened. How did pieces of the cookie move from one place to another? So, let me go ahead and move this back to 50%. And I'm going to go ahead and cover up my camera because we're going to take a look at our cookie and we're going to do this step by step. And again, the reason that I'm covering up my camera is just so that you can focus on the cookie portion and we can really focus on that breaking down of our material. All right, so here's my cookie. And again, today we are pretending that our cookie is actually a rock, and we're going to investigate how water and how wind and animals and plants contribute to the weathering or breaking down of this rock. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our straw. Now notice that this cookie has a couple rough edges. I'm going to first blow, and we're going to see if any weathering happens. Let me go ahead and zoom out just a little bit here. Now as I'm blowing through my straw, let's try and see if we see any parts of this cookie breaking apart. Right, here's my straw, and I'm going to go ahead and create the wind. Now, I saw just one little piece here fly off of that cookie. Now remember, weathering is just breaking down the cookie or the rock. Weathering does not mean that it's moving it from place to place. So all I'm taking a look at is how the cookie is breaking down. Now, that didn't really make a big difference. So let me go to the second step. We're going to use our coffee stir stick here to pretend that these are animals and plants, and the animals and plants are going to be helping to break down the cookie. All right, so again, I'm going to use this stick and pretend that these are animals and plants, and they're going to break down the cookie. So just like humans, whenever we go hiking or whenever we climb rocks or when we're at the beach and we step on rocks, it is constantly breaking down little itty bitty pieces of it. And when plants and animals also walk against rocks or rub against them, they're breaking down little pieces. So now, as you can see, I have a little bit of weathering happening here. I see that bits of the cookie are breaking down into smaller pieces. Okay, so on your worksheet, in this section here, you're going to double click that red box and you're going to describe how did animals and plants cause weathering to your rock. So you're going to explain how we caused weathering to the rock. And again, we're pretending our cookie is the rock. Now, let's go ahead and let's do the dropper next. Again, I don't have a dropper, so I'm going to be using a cup and water. I'm going to go ahead and just use my small straw here. Now, in order for you to make little droplets, you can actually do this little trick. I'm going to move my cookie up a little bit so I can put my cup here. You can take your straw and put it inside your cup, and then you're going to get your finger here, and you're just going to put your finger right over the hole, and that's going to allow you to keep some water inside so that you can use it as a dropper. Now I'm going to put droplets of water onto our rock here, and we're going to see if this makes more weathering, if this breaks down our cookie into smaller pieces even more. So I'm going to let some drops on there. And again, we're observing what is happening to our cookie. I can already see inside that little crack that a little bit of piece of cookie started to break off. Again, this water can represent rainwater, or maybe this is a rock in the ocean and the waves are crashing on it. And we're seeing how these little bits of pieces are breaking off of our big rock from the water. And I'm using a little tray here so that I don't make a big mess. And again, I see some little pieces of our rock being broken apart here. So here's some more weathering happening. Just do a couple more so we can observe how our rock, or our cookie, like I said, is being broken down into smaller bits and pieces. All right. So now that we observed our water, let's go ahead and try and see if the wind is going to break down our cookie even more. So we're going to have my little straw here, and I'm going to start creating winds, and we're going to see if any bits of the cookie continue to fall off. So as I was blowing and creating wind, now I'm seeing more pieces of the rock are breaking off. I saw a couple pieces break off over here, and a couple pieces are breaking over here, and little bits and pieces in here are breaking off as well. So in that section up here, you're going to double click in the red box, and you're going to describe how the wind is breaking down parts of our cookie or the rock. Now, on the bottom of your worksheet, it says erosion is. Remember, erosion is when wind or water moves pieces of earth from one place to another. Now, how did erosion happen during this experiment? Not only did our water and our wind break the cookie down, but I also noticed that when I was blowing to create my winds, erosion was happening because bits and pieces of the cookie moved from here to over here. And I also noticed that when I was dropping the water, that water was helping the cookie to move from here to here. And that is our experiment for the day. Now, if you don't have these materials, remember you can always use my investigation here. And I still want you to try your best to double click those red boxes and type in your observations from my experiment if you were unable to participate and do the experiment yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed your science today, and tomorrow we'll continue talking more about weathering.